My name is Wanda, and I am 63 years old. Last August, my son's in-laws invited me to their cottage in the Laurentians for the civic holiday weekend. 4 days, 11 meals, and a view of the lake they described every morning before the coffee was even poured, and a language they were completely certain I could not follow. They spoke French at the front door when I arrived. At the dinner table, on the dock with their shoulders turned to the water and their backs 2 feet from my chair, the way you speak in front of someone you've already decided doesn't matter. They called me La Veuve Anglaise, the English widow who had done the books at a lumber yard. They refilled my wine glass before it was empty. Not once, the entire weekend, did any of them ask me a single question about myself. By Saturday night, I had heard everything they said, every word of it. And what I did the following Wednesday in a notary's office on Peel Street in Montreal with their family lawyer sitting directly across from me is the only reason I am telling you any of this. Welcome back to Fierce Mom Stories, where the quietest woman at the table is almost always the one who drafted the agreement. Leave a comment and make sure you subscribe. The invitation came from my daughter-in-law by text message, 3 exclamation marks in the subject line. Long weekend at the cottage, so excited for you to see it. She had attached a photograph of a dock over green water, mountains behind it. Beautiful, I will give them that. My son called an hour later, talking fast the way he does when he wants me to say yes before he has to explain why. It'll be good, Mum. They just want to get to know you. I noticed, he said they, not we. I wrote down the address and told him I'd think about it. I thought about it for 2 days at my kitchen table on Kozlov Street in Barrie with a cup of tea going cold in front of me. Something about the invitation didn't sit right, and I couldn't name what it was. Then I packed a bag and drove the 4.5 hours to St. Donat, because you do not say no to your son's new family unless you have a reason, and I did not have one yet. I stopped at a Tim Hortons in Joliette and bought a box of butter tarts to bring. You do not arrive at someone's house empty-handed, no matter what their long weekend looks like on paper. Nobody opened the box. The Fontenot property sits on the north shore of Lac Archambault. If you have not seen that water in August, I cannot help you much. It is clear and cold even in the heat, ringed by pine and maple, and the kind of quiet that costs a great deal of money to maintain. The cottage is not a cottage. It is 4,000 square feet of cedar and glass, a screened dining porch, a boathouse bigger than the first space Dale and I rented to start the business. There is a stone fireplace in the great room that runs floor to ceiling. The moment I walked in, I stopped. My daughter-in-law's mother met me at the door. She is 61, dressed sharply even in linen, and she kissed the air beside both my cheeks the way people do when they want to suggest they have spent meaningful time in France. She turned to my daughter-in-law, who was standing behind her with a stack of folded cloth napkins, and said something. Not in English. I did not react. I want to be clear about that, because it matters very much later. I set my bag down and looked at the lake, and said the drive up had been fine. It had not been fine. There was construction on the 117 north of St. Jovite, and I sat in it for 40 minutes with the air conditioning, losing the argument against the August sun. But nobody asked twice. My daughter-in-law's father came through from the kitchen with a glass of rosé already poured and handed it to me, before asking whether I wanted one. He is 66, silver at the temples, and he has the kind of warm voice that makes strangers tell him things. He called me by my first name and said it was wonderful to finally meet the famous one. His wife said something to my daughter-in-law at the door. I will get to exactly what she said. The fireplace stopped me again on the way through the great room. The surround was white oak, quarter-sawn, which means the grain runs straight and tight, and the medullary rays catch the light like silver threads. The mantel shelf was heavy stock, hand-planed on the top face, and finished with a small OG profile at the front edge. I ran my fingers along the underside of the shelf at the corner. There was a particular softness in the finish there, the kind that comes from hand-rubbing oil into the grain before the top coat goes on. It is something Dale started doing in 1993 and taught to every finisher who ever worked for us afterward. All custom, my daughter-in-law's mother said from behind me. We had a craftsman from the eastern townships. He doesn't take many commissions these days. I said it was beautiful work. I meant it. Not one of them asked how I knew what quarter-sawn white oak was, or why a woman from Barrie would recognize a hand-rub finish by touch. They had already decided what I was somewhere around the front door, and they were not going to be revising it. Here's the part they never asked about. In the spring of 1988, Dale and I drove to the Saguenay for the first time to meet a mill supplier named Gaston Garneau, who produced the cleanest hard maple blanks in the province. I was the only Anglophone in the room, and I understood perhaps 30 words of the conversation. They negotiated around me. One of them laughed and looked at me while he did it, and I smiled because I did not know what else my face was supposed to do. We drove home down the 175, and I did not say very much. That September, I enrolled in French night classes at Georgian College in Barrie. Monday and Wednesday evenings, a classroom that smelled like old carpet and radiator heat. I stayed in those classes until 1995. After that, I kept going by myself. Radio programs, novels, any Quebec supplier who would let me practice on them. I did not learn that language out of spite. I want to say this plainly because it is the truest part of what I am going to tell you. I fell in love with it. I loved that Quebec French has its own rhythm, its own shortcuts, words for things that English has to talk around. Dale and I drove to the Saguenay 17 times over 30 years, and every single time, I was the one who ordered and negotiated and apologized for late containers. In 1997, he gave me a battered copy of Gabrielle Roy's Bonheur d'Occasion from a second-hand bookshop on Rue Saint-Denis and wrote inside the front cover in pencil, "For the woman who never stops learning." It still lives in my bag. So when my daughter-in-law's mother spoke French at her own cottage doorway, I understood her, all of it. Dinner Friday was 7 people at a table built for 10. My daughter-in-law's parents, my son, and daughter-in-law. A couple from the property next door named the Tremblays, who were kind, and me at the end, nearest the kitchen with a wine glass I was holding, mostly to give my hands something to do. Madame Tremblay asked what I did before I retired. I opened my mouth. My son answered for me. "Mom handled the books at the shop for years," he said, "kept everything running." He smiled when he said it. There was a small, friendly laugh around the table, the sort that costs nobody anything. "Something like that," I said. I could have corrected him. I want you to understand that I have been not correcting him for 4 years. Since Dale died in December of 2020, every time someone asks, my son gives them the short version. And the short version is easier, and the short version is wrong. My daughter-in-law's mother leaned toward my daughter-in-law and said in French, "Low but not low enough. Thank God." I was afraid we'd have to spend the whole weekend talking about lumber. My daughter-in-law laughed. The table laughed because she laughed, and that is how a table works. I took a sip of wine. The duck confit was very good. After dinner, my daughter-in-law's father took me out to the screened porch to tell me about himself, which he did not experience as doing himself a favor, but it was. "We were in Paris from 2004 to 2014, he said. "Architectural hardwood import. High-end residential, some hotel work." He was good at these stories. He had told them to a lot of people on a lot of porches. Then his voice changed and got quieter, and it got interesting. 3 years ago, we had a problem with the CBSA, he said. They decided our material was being invoiced below fair value. Countervailing duties, $1.8 million assessed. He said the number like it still had a splinter in it, and they raised our bond from $50,000 to $1.1 million. I know exactly what that means. A CBSA import bond is what the federal government requires before it lets your freight cross the border. $50,000 is the floor. The number a clean company carries after years of no flags, no disputes, no questions from any officer at any port. When they raise it past $1 million, no surety company in the country will write that coverage willingly. And if no one writes your bond, no container moves. You are finished as an importer, and everyone in the trade knows it inside a season. It got expensive, I said. I was 63 years old, he said, and a 28-year-old at a broker's office called me a file problem. He repeated those words the way you repeat something that has not stopped hurting. The government doesn't punish you for being wrong, he said. It punishes you for being small. Then he smiled and topped off my glass. Anyway, water under the bridge. I get up at 5:30, whether there is anywhere to be or not. Saturday morning, I made coffee in a kitchen with a 6-whisperation and took my book to the great room and sat where I could see the lake going from gray to that particular green that belongs only to August mornings in Quebec. I had brought Gabrielle Roy with me. I always bring something. My daughter-in-law came downstairs at 7, barefoot, hair already done, looking the way that 34-year-olds look in August when they have not yet spent decades waking up to a full inbox. "Oh, let me," she said, and picked up my book from the side table before I could answer. She carried it across the room and set it on a bookshelf spine facing inward, so it doesn't leave a ring. There was a coaster 7 inches from where the book had been. Then she looked at the armchair in the corner and made a small, sympathetic face. "You'll be so much more comfortable over there, Wanda. It's much better for your back." The armchair faced the fireplace. The fireplace faced away from the lake. I thanked her and sat in it. She is 34 years old. She has a soft voice and she never raises it, and she rearranges other people's things while she is being kind to them. In 4 minutes, she had moved my book, my seat, and the direction I was facing. She had done every bit of it out loud, in front of me, with a smile. "Just relax," she said. "Today is about you." By 7:15, she was on the dock with her mother, and neither of them came back inside for an hour. Saturday afternoon, we took the pontoon out. My daughter-in-law's father drove. My son sat up front, with a beer he wasn't drinking. My daughter-in-law arranged everyone, including a folded towel she set on the bench beside me as though I had asked for one. Out on the open water, the wind comes across in a way that makes conversation carry strangely. Engine noise makes people careless. My daughter-in-law's father leaned toward her and said in French, half shouting over the motor, "If the bond stays under 50, we don't even need a new brokerage. We ride it through Kessler." She nodded and said something back that the wind took. To anyone else on that boat, it was noise. Here is what it was to me. A continuous CBSA bond under $50,000 belongs to a company with a clean record. No assessments, no flags, no disputes on any entry. A company like that is worth something very specific to a man whose own bond has been pushed to $1.1 million, not for what it manufactures, for what it has never done wrong. Kessler, Millwork and Supply Incorporated has held a $50,000 bond with the Canada Border Services Agencies since 1989. It has never been questioned. Dale spent 35 years making sure of that, and so have I. I held my hat against the wind and watched the shoreline go by. All those cedar docks, all those flags, and I did the arithmetic that a person does not want to do about her own son's father-in-law. We ate a late lunch on the dock. My daughter-in-law was in a bright mood, and she talks sideways when things are going her way. My parents finally sorted out the restructuring. She said to no one in particular, buttering a roll. "Honestly, it's such a relief. You just set it up and then you stop thinking about it." My son looked at his plate. Madame Tremblay said something pleasant about how organized young people are these days. "It's not organized," my daughter-in-law said. "It's necessary. Do you know what an import company's liability exposure looks like when CRA decides it doesn't like your paperwork?" "I do. I have known since 1986. 3 years, she said more quietly. 3 years where you type our name into any trade registry and the same assessment comes up, the same document. I'm 34. I set my fork down. "Which agency issued it?" I asked. It came out in my ordinary voice. In my line of work, it is the second question you ask. It tells you what kind of problem you are actually looking at. Her smile stayed exactly where it was and moved about a 1/4 inch away from her eyes. "You're funny, Wanda," she said. She did not answer. My daughter-in-law's father changed the subject to the Tremblay's new dock lift, and everyone followed him. But she had told me something. Whatever this weekend was, it had started 3 years ago at a federal agency, and it had her name on it. Late afternoon, I went up to the cottage to get a sweater. August on a Quebec lake is not what you assume after sundown. My daughter-in-law's father was standing at the top of the dock stairs, with his back to the cottage, on the phone, not lowering his voice, because there was no one within 20 meters except a woman he had already decided was scenery. "Andre, listen, that's handled. She'll sign it Saturday." A pause, and if she doesn't, she'll sign it Monday because she signs what her son puts in front of her. His voice was easy, almost bored. The mother is just a formality. I did not stop walking. I slowed for about 3 steps and kept going, because the only thing worse than being underestimated is letting someone find out you noticed. I got my sweater. On the way back through the great room, I stopped at the fireplace. I put my hand flat on the mantel shelf at the corner where the profile softens. There is a particular way Dale taught our finisher, Brent, to ease a routed edge, a slight hand sanding that takes the sharpness off without erasing the line. It is not in any finishing manual. It is something Dale worked out himself and wrote in a notebook that still sits in our accounting office, and it is the only signature a piece of Kessler millwork carries. I stood in that woman's great room with my hand on my own work. If you have ever recognized yourself in someone else's house and said nothing, you already know how the rest of this goes. Stay with me. Drop the word oak in the comments if anyone has ever introduced you as less than you are, and subscribe, because the paperwork is coming. Before dinner, I walked out past the boathouse where there is one bar of cell signal and called Phil Marchetti, who has done the accounts for Kessler since 1991. He sounds like a man reading a weather report no matter what he is telling you, which is exactly what you want in a company accountant. I asked about the quarterly HST filing because that was the reason I called. We handled it in 90 seconds. Then he said, "Oh, while I have you, the book value cycle is coming up. Same method as always?" "Same as always," I said. I want to explain that phrase because it is the whole story, and at the time it was nothing. Book value is what a company is worth on paper, using the numbers exactly as they were recorded when they were first written down. Our property on Essa Road in Barrie. 3 acres of industrial land and a 14,000 square foot shop building sits on our books at $164,000 because that is what we paid for it in 1986. The same parcel appraised at $3.4 million last spring. Every commercial real estate agent in Simcoe County will tell you so. The books say $164,000. The books have said $164,000 for 39 years, and they will keep saying it until someone sells the land. I have loved book value my entire career. It tells the absolute truth about the past and a complete lie about the present, and it never apologizes for either one. I put the phone away and went back inside. After dinner, my daughter-in-law's mother and I washed the good crystal together because she does not put it in a machine, and neither do I. It turned out to be the one thing we had in common. She had been drinking since late afternoon. Not heavily, loosened. You know the difference. "I grew up in Louisette," she said. "My father worked the smelter, 31 years of other people's shifts." She rinsed a glass and held it up to the light. "My mother cleaned rooms at a highway motel on weekends to pay for my skating lessons." Her voice did something. "I got a scholarship to McGill," she said. "Studied design. I went to France at 22 on an exchange." She set the glass very carefully on the rack. "I have not been cold since." For about 3 seconds, I liked her. 3 seconds is what it lasted, because she turned to me with the towel over her shoulder and smiled the warm, easy smile of someone offering a confidence. "That's how you always know what kind of woman you're looking at," she said. "You can feel it on people, Wanda, where they started, where they decided to stop." I dried a glass and set it on the shelf. I thought about a woman cleaning rooms in Louisette so her daughter could skate. And I thought about how her daughter had gotten out and spent 40 years since deciding who else was allowed to have gotten somewhere. "Good night," I said. The cottage went quiet around 11. I came downstairs at 11:45 for water. Laurentian nights in August go dark in a way that Barrie does not. No highway sound, no light pollution through the curtains, nothing but the lake. My daughter-in-law's father was at the kitchen island with a glass of scotch. 2 pages were squared up on the granite in front of the stool beside him. A pen lay across them at a slight angle, the way a server sets down the bill at the end of a meal. He slid them toward me. "Perfect," he said. "Saves me chasing you tomorrow. Just a formality for the estate structure. Our notary drafted it. 2 pages. I picked it up. The heading was in bold capitals, centered. Consent of sharehater and waiver of preemptive rights. I put my reading glasses on. I have worn them on a chain since 2001. I read the document the way I have read documents for 39 years. Slowly, out of order, recitals first. Because recitals are where people tell the truth by accident. 3rd recital, 2nd line. That search marriage contract dated the 14th of March, 2025, by and between my son's full legal name and my daughter-in-law's full legal name, executed before Maître André Lemaire, notary, in the province of Quebec. Operative paragraph. The undersigned shareholder hereby unconditionally waives any and all rights under Section 8 of that certain unanimous shareholder agreement dated the 9th of April, 1986, as amended and restated the 3rd of November, 2011. 3 things arrived in my head at the same time, in exactly this order. My son signed something in March and did not tell me. This weekend was not an invitation. And someone in this cottage has read Section 8 very, very carefully. I set my wine glass on the granite, gently. It still made a sound. I left my reading glasses in the car. I said, "These are my distance pair. I'll look at this properly on Monday." I was wearing my reading glasses. He did not know that, because knowing it would have required him to have looked at my face at some point in 2 days. He laughed and said it was honestly just routine paperwork, nothing complicated. "Then Monday won't hurt it," I said. He said something after that about what a long drive I must have had. I said good night. I took my water upstairs and I did not sleep for 1 minute. Old cottage construction. The floor above the kitchen has a cast iron register set into the planks, the kind that opens straight down into the ceiling of the room below. Mine was under the window, about a meter from the foot of the bed. At 10 minutes to midnight, I heard chairs shift in the kitchen. My daughter-in-law, in French, quietly, "She'll sign it Monday?" Her mother, in French, flat and unbothered, the way you answer a child who has asked the same thing twice. "Don't worry, she doesn't understand anything, not even when she reads it." That is the 2nd time I am telling you that sentence, and it is not the same sentence. The first time on the dock, Saturday afternoon, I assumed she meant the language. She did not mean the language. She meant the document. Then her husband, in English, because he does everything important in English. André says Section 8 is the only thing standing between us and a clean bond. Once the shares are in her name, I'm back on as an importer by November. A chair scraped back, water ran, someone laughed at something small. I lay on my back in a guest room in the Laurentians and counted the pine beams in the ceiling. There were 6. I counted them more times than that. My daughter-in-law's mother was half right about me. There was exactly one thing in that cottage I did not yet fully understand. I had a copy of it in a fireproof box 730 kilometers south, and I had been a signing party to it since April of 1986. I put my bag in my car at 9 on Sunday morning. The lake was flat and going gold at the edges where the light hit the shallows near the dock. It was, and I will give them this, the most beautiful thing I had looked at in a very long time. My son came out in his socks with a coffee mug. "You're leaving early." "Long drive," I said. He asked if everything was all right in the voice he uses when he needs the answer to be yes, so we can all go back inside. I closed the hatch and turned around. "What did you sign on the 14th of March?" He blinked twice. "It's just protection, Mum. Celine's dad walked me through the whole thing. It's completely standard." "Did you read Section 8? "Section 8 of what?" And there it was. My son, 37 years old, vice president of a company his father and I built in a rented space on Bradford Street, did not know what Section 8 was. He had signed that agreement at my kitchen table in November of 2011. He was 24 years old. He had a pen in one hand and a piece of my apple cake in the other, and he signed 4 pages without turning any of them over. I let him, because he was 24 and I thought there would be time. You knew I speak French. His face went red from the collar up. It has done that since he was 8 years old. I didn't think it would come up, he said. I got in the car. I did not turn the radio on until Saint-Agath. I drove the 4.5 hours south through the construction on the 117, which was still there and apparently intended to be permanent, and I did not go home. I came off the 400 at Essa Road and drove straight to Kessler Millwork and Supply. I have had a key to the side door since we took possession of the building in 1988. I turned on the fluorescent lights over the shop floor. The planers and molders and wide belt sander stood quiet in the August heat. The place smelled like white oak and machine oil and 39 years of work. It did what an empty shop does, which is hum and settle and smell like itself. The fireproof box is behind the filing cabinet in the accounting office. I have been secretary of this corporation and a member of its board since the 9th of April, 1986, which a notary's family in Montreal had understood as a sentimental arrangement. The kind of title you give a supportive wife the way you make someone treasurer of a service club. The second original of our unanimous shareholder agreement lives in that box, not a scan, an original with 4 ink signatures on the last page, one of them mine. I took it out and sat down in Dale's chair. Nobody has moved that chair in 4 years. I turned on the desk lamp and I read Section 8 out loud in that empty shop, because you catch more in a document when you make your mouth do the work. Section 8.1. No shareholder shall sell, assign, pledge, encumber, or otherwise transfer any shares, voluntarily, involuntarily, or by operation of law, without first offering them to the corporation and thereafter to the remaining shareholders on a pro rata basis. That is standard. Every closely held company in Canada has some version of it. It exists so that your partner's widow does not wake up as the business partner of a stranger. Section 8.2 is where I stopped. Transfer shall include, without limitation, any transfer to a spouse, and any transfer effected pursuant to any matrimonial property agreement, including any marriage contract or cohabitation agreement. I read that sentence 4 times in Dale's chair, with the shop cooling and ticking around me. Section 8.3. The purchase price shall be the book value per share, determined by the corporation's accountant in accordance with the corporation's historical accounting method. Section 8.4. Written notice shall be delivered within 15 days of the executions of any instrument giving rise to a transfer. The remaining shareholders shall have 30 days from receipt of notice to elect to purchase. I sat with my hand over my mouth like a woman at a ceremony because I finally understood what the entire weekend had been. Every arranged chair, every refilled glass, every page of that invitation. They needed my signature on a waiver because the moment my son signed a marriage contract before a Quebec notary, he had made an offer to me. He did not know it, but under a document he had signed at my kitchen table. At 24, he had placed his shares in Kessler Millwork in front of his mother and asked whether she wanted them. I drove home and opened Gabrielle Roy on my kitchen table to the page where Dale had written his inscription. I did not need to read it. I just wanted to hold something he had held. Tuesday, I sat across from Teresa Okoro in an office on Bay Street in Toronto. Teresa is 51, does nothing but corporate shareholder work, and reads documents without moving her face. She read for 12 minutes in complete silence. This clause has been triggered before, she said. It was a statement. 2008, I said. My brother-in-law held 15% from 1997. He passed away in January of that year. Dale and I bought his shares back under this exact section at book value. His estate's lawyer reviewed it for 8 weeks and told them to accept. You were a party to that transaction? I signed the check. Teresa set the agreement down. Then it isn't decorative, she said. That matters more than people think. A restriction nobody has ever enforced starts to look like a suggestion. One that has been enforced once, cleanly, with a lawyer on the other side who accepted it, is a live wire. She walked me through it, in plain language twice, because I asked her to. The marriage contract, dated March 14th, was the triggering event. My son was obligated to deliver written notice to the remaining shareholders within 15 days. By March 29th, he delivered notice to no one. That is his problem, and it does not shorten my window. My 30-day election period runs from actual knowledge, the night of August 2nd, when I heard it through the floor register. That gives you until September 2nd, she said. How fast can you raise funds? How much time do I have? Teresa said, stop being polite about it, and you have enough. The following Thursday, Phil Marchetti issued a book value certificate for Kessler Millwork and Supply, Incorporated, as of March 14, 2025. He did it because I asked him to as a shareholder and an officer of the corporation, which is a request he has honored from me every year since 1991. Book value per $48. There are 8,500 shares. There have been 8,500 shares since 1986 because Dale did not believe in diluting anything, including coffee. I hold 3,825 shares, 45%. My son holds 4,675, 55%. He bought 40 of those points from us in 2011 on a 7-year note he paid off in 2018. The other 15 came to him through Dale's estate. 4,675 shares at $690,900. Here is the other number. In the spring of 2023, a strategic buyer out of Mississauga sent my son an unsolicited indication of interest, valuing the whole company at $12.6 million. He forwarded it to me with 2 exclamation marks. We both said no, and we both felt very good about ourselves. 55% of $12.6 million, $6.93 million, $691,900, $6,930,000. Same shares, same week. 2 entirely different worlds, and the only thing standing between them is which accounting method the shareholder agreement says to use. The Essa Road land is on the books at $164,000, Phil said on the phone in his weather report voice. From 1986. You understand what that does to this number. I know, I said. I wrote the check for it. Somewhere in a notary's office in Montreal, a lawyer had read Section 8 and decided the dangerous thing was getting me to sign a waiver. He should have worried about me not signing. I have known Louisette Garneau for 28 years. She runs export for a hardwood supply cooperative in the Saguenay, the same operation her father built. We started doing business in 1997. We have met in person a dozen times, and one of those times, she drove me up a logging road in a pickup with a broken heater and pointed at a hillside and said that was the stand her father replanted in 1974, and it was almost ready to harvest. I called her on a Wednesday morning. 8 o'clock in Barrie is 9 in Chicoutimi. We talked in French for 20 minutes, her daughter's new restaurant in Alma, the state of hard maple prices, whether the federal softwood lumber dispute would ever actually resolve. Then she said, I'm coming down to the Laurentians on the weekend. A party at a lake property near Saint Donat. I said that was interesting. A man named Fontenot, she said. He has been calling my office for 2 months trying to open an account for a new import company. I was quiet for 2 seconds. Louisette said, Wanda, why is your name on his guest list? There are perhaps 30 Canadian companies that buy Saguenay hardwood by the container on a reliable basis. 30. It is not a large world. Everybody knows everybody, and everybody knows who pays in 30 days. My daughter-in-law's father had invited Louisette Garneau to his party because he believed that relationship belonged to Kessler Millwork and Supply. It has never belonged to the company. It has belonged since 1997 to the woman he had written down on a piece of paper as the mother. He listed you as the mother, Louisette said. That is the only reason I said yes. I wanted to see you. Then Wanda, 30 years. Who taught you to argue in my language? I said I did. Friday, August 8th. Teresa's office produced 3 pages. Notice of election to purchase pursuant to Section 8.4 of the Unanimous Shareholder Agreement of Kessler Millwork and Supply, Incorporated. Electing to purchase all 4,675 shares held by my son at the price of $148 per share for a total of $691,900, computed in accordance with the book value certificate issued by the corporation's accountant, dated March 14, 2025. Bank commitment letter attached. An election you cannot fund is a bluff, and I have never sent a bluff. Registered mail, return receipt requested. To my son at his home address. To my daughter-in-law at the same address, because she was now a party in interest, whether anyone had told her so or not. To the corporation at the Essa Road office, and a courtesy copy to Maître André Lemaire in Montreal. I drove it to the post office on Dunlop Street myself and stood in line behind a man returning a parcel. The tracking number ended in 3814, expected delivery. Monday, August 11th. That evening, my daughter-in-law texted me, "Saturday still on. Dad's doing a little announcement. Excited to see you." I looked at that message for a long time. I want to be honest about what I decided, because I have thought about it a great deal since. I did not decide to go up there and confront anyone. I am not built for it. I decided that I had been invited to a party, and that registered mail travels at the speed of Canada Post, which does not care about anyone's weekend, and that by Monday morning that envelope would be on my son's kitchen table, regardless of what happened Saturday afternoon. Either way, I could not have stopped it if I had wanted to. I did not want to. I typed one word back, yes. There were about 35 people on that lawn Saturday afternoon. Contractors from the Laurentians, a couple of architects from Montreal, neighbors from along the shore, the Tremblays, 4 children running circuits from the dock to the fire pit and back with something fizzy in their cups. Someone had left the little paper flags in the window boxes from the long weekend a month before. I arrived at 3 o'clock in a gray linen jacket I have owned for 11 years and which has never let me down. I brought butter tarts from the same Tim Hortons in Joliette. This time, someone opened the box. A neighbor named Chantal put them on a plate and asked where I was from. Barrie, I said. She said her sister had gone to school there. That was the most genuine 90 seconds of both weekends. At 3:40, my daughter-in-law's father tapped a knife against his glass and stepped up onto the dock stairs so everyone could see him. Families, he said, are supply chains. A few people laughed. He waited. This fall, Fontenot Import and Kessler Millwork become one. Fontenot Kessler Design Surfaces. My daughter-in-law's mother put her hand on her chest. My daughter-in-law beamed. My son stood beside her, with both hands in his pockets and his eyes on the dock boards, and I looked at my son and thought, "You are 37 years old." Then the sliding door opened. Louisette Garneau came through a room the way she always does, quickly and slightly impatient with the furniture. She was wearing a Chicoutimi Saguenayan's cap because she was born there, and she has never pretended otherwise. My daughter-in-law's father moved toward her with both arms already opening, saying her name with the accent he is proud of. She walked past him. She came straight across the lawn to where I was standing near the boathouse with a glass of wine I had not touched, and she took both of my hands and kissed my cheeks. Then she started talking in French, fast and warm and full of names. The hard maple stand above Lac Kenogami that had finally come in after 30 years. The container that sat in Halifax for 6 weeks in 2011 because someone transposed 2 digits on a bill of lading. Her father, who had called me la plus sérieuse des anglophones and meant it as the highest possible compliment. I answered her in French, all of it, fast, because that is how Louisette talks, and you keep up or you fall behind, and I have not fallen behind since 2001. A room does not go silent. Not really. What it does is drop one level all at once, like a furnace clicking off. 35 people kept talking, and every one of them got quieter, and the 2 contractors from Abitibi turned completely around in their lawn chairs. My daughter-in-law's mother was standing by the railing with a bottle in her hand. I watched the color leave her face. Louisette looked around at all of them and said in English, "Why is everyone so quiet? She's the only person I came for." My daughter-in-law's father recovered fast. 13 years in the Paris trade teaches a man how to reclaim a room. He laughed and gestured toward the outdoor table. "Wanda, perfect timing. While we've got everyone, and while we've got a notary right here, let's just get that consent signed and make everything official tonight." He reached behind him and picked up 2 sheets of paper, the same 2 sheets. I set my wine glass on the railing gently. It still made a sound, and in a room that had already dropped 1 level, 35 people heard it. Then I said 1 sentence in French, looking directly at my daughter-in-law's mother. About half the room understood. Chantal from next door did not, so I said it again in English for her. "Don't worry, she doesn't understand anything." My daughter-in-law's mother's mouth opened. "You said that at your front door." "Friday evening," I said. "You said it Saturday afternoon on this dock, 6 feet from my chair, and you said it at 10 minutes to midnight on Saturday night in your kitchen, through the cast iron floor register that opens into the guest room directly above." I was not loud. I have never once gotten anywhere by being loud. "I'm not going to sign it," I said. "Not tonight, not Monday, not at any point." "Wanda," my daughter-in-law's father said, "in the voice you use on a situation, you are trying to walk back from the edge. You don't need to understand all the corporate mechanics of this. Our notary is right here. He can explain the whole thing in plain language." "Section 8.2, I said. He stopped. "The unanimous shareholder agreement of Kessler Millwork and Supply Incorporated, dated the 9th of April, 1986, amended and restated the 3rd of November, 2011. Section 8.2 defines transfer to include any transfer effected pursuant to a matrimonial property agreement, including a marriage contract. When my son executed that contract before Maître Lemaire on March 14th, that was a transfer. It triggered the corporation's right of first refusal. It also triggered his obligation to give the Laurentian shareholders written notice within 15 days. He gave notice to no one. That is his problem, and it does not affect my election window." I looked at the notary, who was standing near the boathouse door in a polo shirt and who had gone a remarkable color. My attorney registered my election Friday morning. Registered mail, return receipt requested. Tracking ends in 38114. It will be delivered tomorrow morning. Election to purchase all 4,675 shares held by my son at the price specified in the agreement. Book value per the certificate from the company's accountant, $148 per share. Total consideration, $691,900. Funded. The bank commitment letter is in the envelope. My daughter-in-law said to her father, fast and very quietly, "What is book value?" And I said, "The thing I had been carrying since the top of those dock stairs." "You told your notary I was a formality. You were right. I'm Section 8.2. His phone began vibrating on the outdoor table. The notary's name on the screen, face up, where the Abitibi contractors could read it. He did not answer. What happened next I had not expected to enjoy, and I did not enjoy it. He got loud about gratitude and sacrifice, about how they had given my son a real future, a proper family with actual standards and connections that take a lifetime to build. 3 years of work I had just destroyed in front of his guests. He brought his hand flat down on the table hard enough to make the glasses jump. My daughter-in-law's mother went the other direction, which is always harder to watch. She cried and said they had welcomed me, opened their home, treated me with warmth. My daughter-in-law said my name 4 times in 4 different tones. I did not raise my voice. There was nothing left to say loudly. I turned to Louisette and pointed at the built-in bookshelves along the cottage wall, quarter-sawn white oak, the same profile as the mantel. "Invoice?" I asked in French. She walked over. She looked for about 3 seconds, the way you look at a face you know from a photograph. "Kessler," she said. "White oak, April 2022. I remember this order. It's shipped to a fabricator in Santa Agathe." Invoice 22 KMS 0317, I said, turning back. Custom millwork, quarters on white oak, hand-rubbed oil finish, eased router profile. My shop milled it. My finisher finished it. I put my hand on the mantle at the corner. That edge right there. That is how we do it. That is how we have always done it. One of the Abitibi contractors set his glass on a side table and walked to his truck without saying anything. His colleague followed him 2 minutes later. That is what it sounds like when a reputation decides to leave a party. There is nothing dramatic about it. It is just a screen door closing. My son followed me to my car. It was still full light, the lake going flat and gold, someone's dock radio carrying across the water. I turned around. "Did you read it?" I said. "No." "Did you know I speak French?" He looked at the gravel. "Yes." I nodded once. "Here is what happens," I said. "I'm purchasing your shares at the price in the agreement you signed. That closes in November. And then I am going to put a written offer in your hands to buy those same shares back from me. Same section, same price, $148 a share. Good for 5 years. He stared at me. "What's the condition?" "You come alone," I said, "and you read it before you sign it." From up on the dock, my daughter-in-law called his name. My son turned his head toward her voice. He didn't go. He just turned his head. But I already had my answer, and so did he, and we both stood on that gravel knowing it. "Go on," I said. "It's your party, and I was not being cruel. I meant it kindly." I drove the 4.5 hours south on the 15 and the 400. The construction on the 117 was finally gone. I turned the radio on at St. Agathe and left it on the rest of the way home. The return receipt came back Monday morning, signed for at 9:52. Maître Lemaire sent 2 letters. The first said my election was untimely. The second said a marriage contract did not constitute a transfer within the meaning of Section 8. Teresa answered both with 1 letter and 1 attachment. A photocopy of the signature page from November of 2011, with my son's name on it in his own handwriting, beside the section he had not read. Nobody filed anything. People with a real argument file, people without 1 write letters. We closed on a Friday in November in a boardroom on Bay Street that smelled like recycled air. $691,900. $310,000 of that was mine. What was left of Dale's life insurance after the funeral and the last of the equipment loan. The rest came on a line of credit from TD Bank, secured against my own 3,825 shares, which a buyer out of Mississauga had valued at just under $4 million 18 months earlier. The loan officer was pleasant and about 40, and he looked at the file, and then he looked at me and asked whether I had someone helping me go over all of this. I slid 2 documents across the desk, the book value certificate and the Mississauga indication of interest. "You would be lending me $381,900, I said, against collateral a strategic buyer priced at $3.97 million less than 2 years ago. Your loan to value is under 10%. He read both pages twice. On my way out, he asked what I had done before I retired. "I haven't retired," I said. "I own 8,100 of 8,500 shares of Kessler Millwork and Supply Incorporated, every one of them." Louisette's cooperative sent my daughter-in-law's father a short email in October. New accounts require 3 years of clean CBSA entry history and no outstanding assessments. Fontenot Import and Design had the wrong kind of history, and Fontenot Kessler Design Surfaces LLC, registered in September, filed for dissolution in December. I know the dates because they are public record and because I am the kind of woman who checks. Our bond is still $50,000. It has been $50,000 since 1989 because no one at this company has ever given the Canada Border Services agencies a reason to look at us twice. I am the reason for that, and I am finally willing to say so out loud. All 17 people on our shop floor still have their jobs. Brent still runs the finishing room. He still teaches every new hire the same eased edge. Hand-sanded, softened at the corner so it will not catch on anything, will not cut anyone who bumps into it. It is not in any manual. It is just how we do it. My son rents the small office above the shop. He pays me $450 a month because he insisted and I let him. He comes in every day. He is good at the work. He is now an employee of a company he was once vice president of, which is a sentence neither of us has said out loud yet. And I will not be the one to say it first. We have lunch on Tuesdays. We do not talk about the agreement. My daughter-in-law's mother sent a card in November. A watercolor of a lake on the front. The Laurentians in autumn, all that red and gold. Inside, she had written that she hoped we could put this unfortunate misunderstanding behind us and move forward as a family. I sat down twice with a pen. I could not find a single true sentence to write back, and I am 63 years old, and I have no interest in sending false ones. Gabrielle Roy lives open on my kitchen table now. I have stopped putting it away for company. Next to it is a stamped envelope addressed to my son. Inside is a one-page offer. 4,675 shares of Kessler Millwork and Supply at $148 a share, good through November of 2030. I have not mailed it yet. He knows it exists. That is the point of it. And on the inside cover of that book, in pencil in Dale's handwriting, for the woman who never stops learning. I am not angry at those people. I am finished explaining myself to them, which is a different thing entirely, and a better one. Here is the only part of any of this I would hand to someone else. When someone looks around a room and decides that you are the one who won't understand, that sentence has never once, not in 39 years, determined what you actually understand. It only determines how freely they will speak in front of you. And if you can stay a little quieter than they expect for a little longer than they think you can manage, they will keep talking. They will explain everything. They will hand you the 2 pages and the pen and ask you to sign, and you will have had months to decide exactly what you are going to do instead. That is my story. 1 weekend, 1 clause, and an agreement I typed myself at a kitchen table in 1986. If it makes you want to reread something you signed when you were young, do it this week. Subscribe, leave a comment, and I will see you in the next one.